All right, golfwrx.com and TXG viewers, I'm Johnny Wunder, C and Fraser.
Good to be back.
Newest episode of the 14. We're going to talk about CT Pan.
Good win.
Yep, big win over in South Carolina.
Holding off a few big names.
Yep. So let's just dig into his bag. Let's just get right into it. So he's a Titleist staffer.
Yep.
He's a young guy. He came out of the University of Washington. Interesting bag because it's a bag that for the most people you can look at it. It's something you can actually buy at the store. A lot of the stuff. So we'll just start right at the top of his bag. He is in a Titleist Ts2, which is this head right here. I think you've all seen it in the trades. He's a 9.5. He's A1 setting, straight in. So I talked to the tour rep for Titleist. He is what they would call a low spin, low launch player. He's constantly trying to find ways to get the ball in the air. So he is in an Atmos blue Fujikura shaft, X-Flex. Talk to me about that shaft and why a guy like him would want that shaft.
Well, it's interesting. We talk about guy needing a little bit of additional launch, needs a little bit of air time under his golf ball. Must be fairly shallow in how he delivers it. Must lean the shaft a little bit, narrowing that spin loft in order to create those kind of flat launch conditions. One thing we see in club fitting, Johnny, in all honesty, is you don't really get that from the shaft. He has a load preference. That's what I see. So for me, when it comes to fitting guys, if you need to hit the ball higher, you go from a 9.5 to 10.5. Right?
Yeah,
that's the easier way because it's the more predictable way. It's the when we're dealing with something in motion like a shaft as it loads, we're not guaranteed what that shaft is going to do, and you and I are going to load that shaft differently. So that tip soft shaft, the one that's designed to hit it high, you may hit it low and I may hit it high depending on how we load it. So his shaft selections, as we are going to go through them right now, is something for me that talks very much to his load preference rather than what he's trying to do with the golf ball. It will play a part in that, but Atmos blue was the kind of middle of the road. Atmos red was the softest in the tip, and as we go into these other shafts, we can talk to some of his other preferences.
Right.
But it is an interesting bag, and someone who's not built or blessed with the most firepower on tour, which is why Harbour Town was such a good course for him.
Perfect for him.
You see on Sunday, a guy like DJ who had kind of built himself a second serve golf swing for that course. I mean, to see DJ with ball speeds in the 160s this week with the driver was crazy. I've never seen that before. But he built himself a second serve driver for Harbour Town specifically, and it almost worked.
Right.
For a 5-hole stretch there, he would have been the man.
Well, yeah, he had a little bit of a road bump, but I talked to when I talked to the guy that's out there, his name's JJ, and he talked about he's like a 111 to 112 swing speed guy, 165, 160. So he's not a big hitter. He's a shorter stature guy,
a little below kind of tour average.
Right, and they only tip his shaft like a half inch. So he's he's not. I don't want to say like not your typical tour player, but he. Will take help where he can find it.
Sure.
And he'll try to find it anywhere. So we're going to go back into what just proves that your theory here into his 3-wood.
Yep.
He's in the TS3, which is the deeper faced, I would say more player profile of the Titleist heads. He's in 16.5, set at A1, so it's true to loft at 16.5. He's in a shaft that, as far as I know, he's the only guy on tour with a Tensei red. Speak to that shaft in a 3-wood. To me, that sounds like something you hit straight up in the air.
Without a doubt. I mean, it's definitely something that from the midsection all the way into the tip is very soft. So obviously for him, he likes I always go back to that load profile statement that he likes something that has a bit more of an active sort of bottom to it. He likes to feel the shaft sort of release, and for him that creates the right timing for him. So that maps to some of the other shafts that he uses once we get deeper in the bag. But yeah, very few people playing Tensei red anywhere, to be honest, other than Tensei red's an OEM shaft.
Right.
That the OEMs think would be beneficial to the average golfer. Very interesting that CT Pan is fit into that one.
Yeah.
Really interesting.
It's funny. We talked a little bit about. I guess this is one of the shows that we did when we were both kind of separated. They talked a little bit about Graeme Mcdowell.
Yeah.
And he plays shafts that, to a fitter, really wouldn't make any sense, but it was for the very reason it's how he loads the shaft.
It's how you load it.
It's how you hit it, yeah. Where definitely. The shaft didn't make a difference in, his shot pattern. It was literally how he loaded it, and they adjusted that with loft.
Well, it's one of the reasons we have gears here, because launch monitors are phenomenal for telling us what happens at the moment of truth, what happens at impact.
Right.
Gears is phenomenal for telling us the story of how your club got to impact.
Right.
It tells us the rest of the journey. So, you know, on the backswing, how are we loading it? What are your speed ratios, your hand speed, the head speed? You know, at what rate is that club rotating, twisting, drooping? All those sorts of things. So we know the pressures that are placed on the shaft that create the dynamic situation at impact. So, you know, that's the key to fitting is not thinking about it in a one-dimensional plane. You have to think of fitting in 3 dimensions.
Right. It'd be fun to get gears on a guy under the gun like Tiger on 12 at Augusta and put him on gears during that swing. That would be an interesting experiment.
Without a doubt.
See what changes. Okay, now we're going to get into, I guess, the top iron part of his bag. So he's in a Nike Vapor, kind of Brooks Koepka-y 2 to 3 iron that he plays.
It was a really good little head. That
it was a great head, a very popular head amongst the tour guys.
It was.
I think he's been playing that since college, University of Washington. I believe it's 19 degrees aloft.
Right.
It's pretty self-explanatory what that club does. It's a gap filler. Is in a Project X hazardous red 6.0 graphite shaft in that. So that's same profile.
Idea. Yeah. Okay. Exact same thing.
Then you go into his 4 iron. The 4 iron is this head right here, which is the TMB. Another popular choice. Charlie Howell's in this head, the top of his bag. There's a bunch of guys. What is it? You know, your experience with this with a TMB? It's an odd profile for a club that's supposed to get the ball into the air because it's not like it doesn't look super game improvement-y.
No.
But this is literally just the guys like it because they hit it straight up in the air. So talk to me about this head.
Well, I mean, I think of all the driving irons out there, all the hollow-bodied irons, you know, that one is the one that sort of retains the most classic sort of look. You know, most of them go with a wider sole and really, you know, bring the CG down. So I think for that one, that probably is the one. If for the guy who's looking to drive it forward a little bit, they're probably going to go into you know, TMB. I think the Titleist guys who are looking for the ball going up are AP3 guys. Right. You know, looking for that CG wider sole, CG being a bit lower. So yeah, I mean, again, just for him, something that retains a lot of ball speed, and ball speed being, you know, the primary thing that creates the up. You know, a lot of people will give launch and spin too much. You know, too much sort of the 3 things that make it go up. They think that launch and spin are the most important things. It's actually ball speed's the most important thing. So that's obviously something for him that's a little bit hotter than his AP2.
And ball speed's something, you said something that I didn't really even realize, is that, you know, for the folks at home, when you're watching guys on TV, now we have access to all this technology, the launch monitors and the ball speed. If you see Tiger or Tommy Fleetwood or Henrik Stenson, one of those guys that are really good ball hitters out on tour, watch the consistency in their ball speed. If they're hitting, you know, 15, 25 irons, and they're all within 1 or 2 miles an hour of each other, you know this, the guy's striping it.
That's really what you're looking for. You're looking for that consistency of speed, launch, spin, trying to get that to kind of be the same, you know, shot after shot, because that's what these guys are looking for under the gun. They want to be able to trust the numbers that they expect in the yardage book is exactly what they're going to see on the golf course. And then you obviously cater to the situation. You know, are you feeling a little adrenaline? Are you a little jacked up? Are you're going to hit it a little bit further late in the day, so on Sunday. So, you know, that's part of the skill set of winning tournaments. Right.
Okay, so really quickly, I just want to go through the specs that cover his irons before we get into his actual, you know, 5 through 9 irons. So he is 2 degrees flat of Titleist standard, so that would put him in a 60 lie angle on the 5 iron. And then he is also Titleist standard length, which would put him in a 38-inch 5 iron. So once again, he's a shorter guy I think with just normal size arm, you know, normal length arms. So, you know, that the 2 degree flat makes a lot of sense. He's in a 6.0 rifle Project X, and it's a shaft that he's been in for 13 years. And we had a chance to text back and forth a little bit, and he said literally for him, he probably could switch into a stiffer shaft. He probably could mess with different types of dynamic golds. For him, it's, which speaks to what you said at the top of the show, he's a feel guy. It's all how the release feels. He trusts that shaft. He knows what it does, and it seems to work in every head he switches in and out.
Right.
So what do you know? You know, let me ask you this question: Project X 6.0 versus like a Dynamic Gold Tour issue S400. Like, what can a player experience in both of those shafts?
Pulls apart, other end of the spectrum. So depending on what type of loader you are, you're going to end up in one over the other. I mean, his situation in the Project X 6.0 is a real story of preference, isn't it? Yeah. You know, we talk about the odd shaft selections that people make at times, and that would be considered sort of one of them. Not a commonly used shaft on tour, but just obviously loves it. 120 grams, pretty stiff in the butt section, very stiff in the tip section, but you would expect tour guys to be 6'5", 7'0". It's obviously just what he's comfortable with. The club is in the right place at the right time for him, and that's exactly what he needs to be at his best.
And that's, learning a little bit from you as I'm in Toronto a little bit longer, but you talk about a lot about putting components that are going to match that player's swing. So you're talking about their release and putting the club in the right place at the right time. Could be a combination of anything, and that's kind of what makes you so great, is you can figure that out pretty quickly. Well, for the most part, I would say.
The process of elimination that we go through is, the first 10, 15 minutes with any player we work with is we're kind of poking and prodding at their swing a little bit. We're kind of making things happen. So we have a bunch of assumptions based on what we see from the initial testing with their own equipment.
Sure.
So we go, okay, these are the red flags, this we would like to improve, that would like to improve. So we go about making those assumptions and grabbing a few shafts from the wall, a few heads from the drawer, and we try and kind of create reactions. And based on our theories, if we see those reactions, we're either on the right track or the wrong track, and that's kind of the process of elimination that we go down with fitting.
Right.
So with someone like that, we would give him a little extra weight. What does he do? Does the club get a little trap behind him because he's not quite in the right place at the right time? Does his dispersion start to get a little bit wider? Does his strike pattern start to stray a little bit? All those are real sort of giveaways that the player's not enjoying the feel of that club, not enjoying the timing of that golf club, and that's in any fit, whether it's a tour player or an amateur golfer.
Which speaks to the guys back 20, 30 years ago before all this technology. We say those guys could pick it up on sound,
100%,
and the way the ball's flying. It's crazy.
That's exactly it. We have multiple senses for a reason. So I think at times with the launch monitor sort of situation that we've got now, the culture of that is, we go, what do the numbers say? What do the numbers say? When it doesn't always have to be, optimal, but it does always have to be functional.
Sure.
It has to work, in the field, and we may at times see numbers stray a little bit from the optimizer charts that are out there and all that sort of stuff, and those are great, but they're nothing but guidelines. Ultimately the player has to make the golf club do what it needs to do. They have to make it cut, they have to make it draw, they have to make it go high and low.
They have to trust it,
100%. Yeah, they've got to feel like they have maximum control of that golf club. Right.
Okay, so he's in a back into a set 5 through 9. He's in 718 AP2, which is the
latest,
current iteration of that iron. Once again, talk to him a little bit about that. He's been in those irons since college, or a version of those irons.
Right.
He said the nice thing about him is they've changed the models, but the feels, the profiles hasn't changed. They still do what they're supposed to do. They fly the same way.
Yep.
And it's just an iron, once again, he trusts. So sort of the running narrative with CT, as I talked to Aaron Dill and I talked to JJ Wiesenbeck from Titleist, this guy doesn't change.
Yeah,
they fit him. It's in Sea Island at the beginning of the season, and he's one of those guys that they will literally have to beg to get into new wedges, just to swap out the grooves. And unless his house is on fire, he doesn't switch clubs.
Interesting.
He's just one of those guys, and the tour guys are out there to swap in product. They're just, and he's like the easiest guy to work with because he just doesn't change.
Yeah, likes to get it settled.
Right.
A settled bag is a few less variables to think about week to week, and it's a few less things to manage when it comes to turning up at a tournament.
Right.
You'll have the caddy run over to the truck and check your loft and lies, and the guys do that most weeks when they travel with the clubs. Air travel can be pretty tough in the clubs, so they'll do that. But yeah, a lot of these guys are really reluctant to change.
Right.
You actually can see it on the range at times when some of the shaft reps come near. Like they'll shy away. They'll literally turn their back on them because that's the sign that I'm not interested in talking to you. I'm not interested in changing anything. That's the telltale sign.
There's a show we could do based on stories that you and I have heard of guys, club companies trying to get Fred Couples or somebody into a club, and they're going, 100%. Some of the stories are true. They're legends, but they're true. Okay, so talk to Aaron Dill a little bit about his wedges.
Yep.
He is in an SM7 F grind 46. It's a standard sole. Gap wedge, same thing, 52.
Yep.
His 52 is bent to 53. He's in a prototype sand wedge, 58 bent to 59, and then he's in a lob wedge of 62, which is an M grind, which is bent to 64.
Yeah.
So the 64 was something that when he turned pro, I kind of asked him, what adjustments did you make to the golf course? And his reaction was kind of like, well, I had to identify some holes in my equipment where I was, seeing some deficiencies, and it was at the bottom of his bag. So,
which is quite interesting to me that someone with a little less firepower would go with more tools in their arsenal in the short side of the bag.
Right.
Most guys go, like someone like a Webb Simpson, it's a bag of head covers.
66 hybrids,
so sometimes the shorter guys go with that route because they feel like they need a little bit more help, with those longer par 4s and 5s and par 3s now on tour can be 235, 240. So that is an interesting decision he's made to really tighten up the short game kind of part of the bag for him.
Right.
And an interesting setup with the grinds, FFKM, which is very interesting. So it really shows that he's paying attention to what he uses that wedge for. FF being obviously 2 standard soles.
Yep.
K being, I think his was 10 degrees on the K grind, which if it's 59, it has 11,
and
so it has an additional.
The M grind, I think, is a 10-degree bounce. I think
it's
what it is.
8. I think it might be 8, and I think I saw it in the pictures you guys had on the website. But again, the M grind giving some sort of relief on the back, relief in the toe and the heel, giving you multiple ways to play that wedge shot. I love that he's got. Every club has a very specific job, and the sole design sort of choice gives that away.
Yeah, Aaron, it's been fun talking to Aaron Dill over the last, 6-7 months. We talk wedges a lot and strategy and this and that. And, he's a big believer that your wedges should be structured in bounce. So, like, if you're a high bounce player, you shouldn't have 4 high bounce wedges. You should have a low bounce wedge, 100%. A high bounce wedge. And you see that. Yeah, you see that in CT's bag because he might have a 62-degree wedge at 8 degrees bounce, but he's opened it up to 64, so now it's 10 degrees bounce. Right. But there's also, usable bounce versus the bounce that kind of screws you up, right?
100%.
So, overall, and I do have to comment on his wedge shaft. So he's from the University of Washington. We'll hopefully provide pictures for you as soon as possible. But he is in purple Dynamic Gold S400, purple one-off shafts just for him.
Yep.
From the UW. If you look at his wedges, if you go to Vokey Wedge Rup on Instagram, it's Aaron Dill's page. He's got pictures of the wedges. They're all huskied out. I'm from Washington, so obviously I'm biased. I'm a big Husky fan. But one of the cool things, one of the things about getting on tour is you do, actually in this day and age, anybody can kind of do it. But
well, I mean, Dynamic Gold have those.
It's like TVD or something is the name of the.
Yeah, well, it's actually it's a bunch of like tour spec have it on their website. You can buy the different colored Dynamic Gold shafts. So a lot of the Japanese sort of websites have it.
Right.
So yeah, just as you say, in this day and age, you can pretty much customize anything.
Which makes it fun.
Yeah, 100%.
Because before all the customized stuff was, you'd see Larry Bobka on the range in 2000 with some rocket launcher that you'll never, be able to touch. So. Okay, and then obviously in the putter, he's in a pretty standard Scotty Cameron. It's a 009. It's all huskied out.
Nice.
Love
the 009.
A lot of those college kids, especially the Pac-10 kids, are so close to Scotty Cameron and where the studio is. A lot of those guys get totally Scotty Cameroned out. I know a bunch of guys that played at USC and UCLA, and the amount of Scotty Cameron putters that flow through the Pac-10 is just obnoxious. And they're all one-off, beautiful putters. So, I guess the takeaway for me, not a fitter, just kind of Joe Blow off the street while looking at his bag, is it's a little encouraging knowing that, even the guys that are winning golf tournaments out there that are not high-speed players, his speed profile is very similar to mine. He might be a couple ticks higher than I am, but he's looking for help. He's looking for strategy. He's building into his bag. His job. Each of his clubs have a job to do, like you say all the time, which is a beautiful piece of advice. For me, it's encouraging. So, like, you as a fitter, what advice can you give to the people out there, like in relation to CT's bag? What do you see there that can help the general golfer?
There's a bunch of things that make sense. There's a bunch of things that don't make sense, which means basically that it's for a different job. So he has that club in there for a reason. Like, I think the lack of hybrids, the lack of a sort of an additional high lofted club before he gets to his irons is interesting for me. For somebody who's looks like he's fighting and scratching to hit the ball a little bit higher, and he goes straight from a fairway wood into a long iron, which is really interesting for me. So obviously is functional for him. you know, he was really interesting because he had a chance to win last year. Forget what tournament it was. He was tied for the lead, and he winged one out of town down the right-hand side, and you know, ended up making double when he had the lead. I watched the tournament on Sunday, and I was really interested when he got to 18. How did he play 18? And he could not have played 18 any better. He striped it down the middle with his driver. I mean, he flagged it with his iron. I mean, literally the ball ran past the hole on the way to being like 15, 12 feet past. He really learned from that, and you know, you don't become world number one amateur if you don't have that, you know, skill set and toughness. I mean, he's a legit player. Yeah, he really is. I mean, that's an incredible achievement to be world number one amateur.
Well, he's one of those guys. You know, I talk about golf IQ a lot with this Quest to Qualify project I'm doing, and I'm studying the guys that really think. Like, there's guys out there. There's ball hitters. Right. Like I always make the comparison. There's really, really good punchers, and there's really gnarly boxers. Yeah. Like Floyd Mayweather is a gnarly boxer, where Tyson was a big puncher, right?
That's right.
There's totally different sides of the spectrum. So a couple of quick bits on his equipment also. He's an anti-left guy. He hates hitting it left, so his driver's got a little bit of rack glue on the toe. For a little help.
Quickly on that. I mean, there's a perfect segue into a conversation for the, you know, the people watching J-Dub, that people will go, well, he's using tip soft shafts and he doesn't like hitting it left. Like, I thought soft shafts go left. They don't. They don't. No. They don't. I mean, they absolutely don't. They can, but they absolutely don't have to for everyone. You know, the chances are, to be honest, I see more people hitting softer shafts on the blocked side than on the hook side, 100%, because the shaft is in trail, you know, is in sort of trail deflection as it comes in. Now, a shaft is never truly in trail deflection where it's still got lag on it, but it's not in as much lead deflection where we're rotating the head as much. So that's a more common thing for soft shafts than you know, snap hooking it just because the shaft's a bit soft.
Right.
That's probably a reaction of your golf swing based on what you feel, not so much a reaction of what the shaft is doing dynamically. So, you know, I think that's a really interesting takeaway for the guys today, that, you know, for somebody who hates to hit the left side of the course and he's using everything that's very soft, that's interesting. Yeah, it's, you know, there's a bunch of things, you know, we talked about today that sort of go against, I guess, go against the story. So, well, that's all we have for CT Pan. Yeah, it's one guy. You know, next week we have an interesting show. Next week because we have teams, and they're in New Orleans doing some weird format. So, well, some stacked teams as well. We've got Fleetwood and Garcia. You've got the Koepkas. Koepkas are playing. That's that should be interesting. That's pretty controversial. I mean, I was listening to some people talking about that the other day, and I hadn't really thought of that. That, you know, obviously, you know, Koepka's brother, you know, not having status has kind of been elevated into a position where, you know, he's playing. He wins, he's got exemptions. Right. He's, you know, it's a lot of money and points and different stuff. So that's an interesting one. I don't know if I'd want to be like, this is going to be. I don't know if I'd want to be Brooks Koepka's brother. You know, like, because he's just like this big strapping three-time. It's like, oh man, that's a lot to live. Maybe I'm wrong there. I don't know. That'd be a tough gig. It'll be interesting though. There will be. Down in Zurich. So they're down in Zurich, and then you know, we have a fun summer coming up. So we got a lot of the majors. We have the PGA Championship next. We're going to be in a busy run. I mean, we're going to get through this little run of tournaments. We're going to hit we're going to hit Bethpage, and then we're just big tournament after big tournament. Yep. You know, obviously, I think when the Canadian Open's here, we can probably do this one live from Hamilton, which is the goal. Yeah. So, you know, I want to say this to the viewers. You know, obviously the show is, you know, it's still new. We're still figuring out the format and consistency of getting it out. You know, when we're in town together. Yeah. Please fire in your questions. If there's something else that we're not talking about, I do get a lot of DMs about, can you talk about the grips? Can you talk about this? The ball, or you know, any of those sorts of things for sure. We're trying to get as much information as we can. It's, you know, usually it's a sprint on Sunday night to get this from the reps and the tour guys. So that's the nature of the beast, isn't it? Because, you know, the victory happens and then people go, what does he use? Right. They want the information. So, and you know, really until, you know, the back nine, we don't know who's going to win. So it's hard for us to sort of preempt that and sort of get the information prior. But you know, one thing I would love to add in at some point would be some launch monitor data. Oh yeah. You know, if we can you know, get some tour reps to share some launch monitor, you know, test data with these guys and see some of the things that they see in test sessions, that would be awesome. That would be awesome. Or just go to a test session and see them see it go down for real. Absolutely. Yes, I mean, a lot of the guys that we talk to, there's like, you know, in the golf business, there's your marketing people, and then there's your guys who are actually building the club. So we're fortunate enough to
I'm chasing these guys down on Sunday, their day off, when they're with their kids, and they're about ready to get.
Share, aren't they?
Yeah, they're really cool. So I try to get as much as I can, but you know, any feedback you guys have for the show, let us know. It's growing. We love doing this, and it's been fun so far. And that is the 14 for this week. TXG, golfwrx.com. We'll see you guys very soon.
See you next week.
And my man, have a good week.
You too.
Yeah.